Part skipping. The act of skipping seasons of a show in order to get to the good part. There's often a stigma associated with part skipping, but is this stigma warranted? And where exactly do we draw the line? What is up, dog? I am Hydrabred, and today we're going to explore a more complete understanding of part skipping. Now, one thing that I often hear people say when they are watching a show is, when does it get good? This is usually an indicator that they are not enjoying what is on screen, or at the very least, it's not living up to their expectations. And I find it quite difficult to tell these people that the show does get good if they only watch a dozen more episodes. Because you have to understand that the point of watching a TV show is entertainment. And if they have to commit a solid 4 hours to start being entertained by a show, then it probably isn't worth their time investment. Especially when there are so many TV shows out there that are immediately enjoyable from episode 1. So in essence, why should somebody spend time watching something that bores them before becoming eventually good, when they could just watch something that's immediately or consistently good? Well, many shows tend to spend the early sections building up concepts, and it takes a while for all of that to come together and click. But I wouldn't say that shows that do that are bad. In fact, in many cases, it's necessary to spend this time building the world of a story before the final payoff comes. The reason people keep watching shows like this is typically because they liked the ideas the show was putting out there from the beginning. For instance, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a show where an eccentric genius meticulously outsmarts hilariously ripped Aztec gods who lead armies of vampires. He does so with the power of sunlight magic while begrudgingly accepting help from World War II era Nazi Germany, who sends an army led by a cyborg. And this show only gets more nuts from there. But you wouldn't know that if you stopped watching it because of the slow pacing of part 1, which is effectively a British soap opera between a gentleman and a scoundrel who is trying to steal his generational wealth and becomes a vampire to achieve that end. Part 1 of JoJo's is a show that fundamentally requires you to appreciate drama stories to get into, and it takes itself pretty seriously. A lot of people drop JoJo's because that kind of story bores them, but if you do like that style of storytelling, part 1 is incredible. Part 2, however, has a broader appeal. If you're a fan of comedy, action, or basically anything else in storytelling, you can easily get into it. So from me describing that show, would you rather start with part 1 or part 2? I'm willing to bet most people would answer the one with gods and Nazis fighting with comedic undertones. Do you see what I'm getting at? This is why people skip parts of shows. They want to see the genre of storytelling that most interests or entertains them. But even so, fans of JoJo will swear that skipping a part ruins the story, because it has a certain interconnectedness of themes that provides much greater payoffs, because JoJo is ultimately an anthology, and while each part has a new main character, so it's easy to get into for new viewers, they also have a lot of history that informs the present situation, and it gives it much more meaning. A show like Dragon Ball, on the other hand, not so much. Most people have heard of Dragon Ball, and if you haven't, well, it's an action comedy about a guy named Goku who's always trying to become stronger. That's basically all you need to know to enjoy the show. If you watch a random episode, you could probably follow what's happening. But Dragon Ball is a series where the vast majority of its fans skipped the first third of the story. No joke. The entirety of Goku's childhood and teenage years is a very large section of the story, which is integral. But then there's Dragon Ball Z, which starts when Goku has already been married and had a child, and for most fans, that's the starting point. It's actually crazy how different the attitude of part skipping is between fans of these two series, because most Dragon Ball fans will tell you to skip the first part and go straight to Z or even Battle of Gods. Most JoJo fans, though, will feel annoyed or insulted if you so much as insinuate that you want to skip to the good part. So that's really why I wanted to make this video. What exactly accounts for the difference in attitude, and why should or shouldn't people skip parts? Well, I think the strongest case for opposing part skipping in a story is that of respecting an author's artistic intent and their vision. Show writers, comic authors, mangaka, you name it, are all artists. They usually intend for their work to be viewed in a certain order, and this order allows for 3 major factors: setup, payoff, and interconnectedness of themes. It is actually really common for a story to set up an obscure detail early on, only for the payoff to happen years later. For instance, in the acclaimed series Gravity Falls, there are hints scattered in basically every episode for all of the show's big mysteries. So when those mysteries finally happen, it becomes an aha moment. One of the mysteries that appeared in the opening sequence was a book foreshadowing a ritual with a lot of symbols on it, and as you go through the show, you start to understand the characters corresponding to these symbols, so when the ritual is finally revealed in the finale, it all makes sense. But if you just skip to the ending without watching the show, it's going to feel like it came out of left field rather than being a payoff to a brilliant setup. Furthermore, the themes of a story really start to fall apart when you miss out on a story's beginning, because in almost all stories, the very beginning is used to foreshadow or set up the motivations, ideals, and messages of a show and its characters. If you skip Naruto, for instance, and go into Naruto Shippuden, the story stops being about a lonely kid making a name for himself and just becomes a fight show. Likewise, with Bleach and its mature themes, the opening act conveys about death, love, and self-sacrifice. So really, you would think that part skipping completely undermines and diminishes the depth and value of a show, reducing it to whatever adrenaline rush the good part has to offer. But that's where you would be wrong, because in practice, part skipping is actually not bad at all. In fact, part skipping is the only way to get some people to care about the deeper meaning of a story they like. And I know this because I speak from experience. You see, I wasn't a Dragon Ball fan at all growing up until I played one Dragon Ball game and watched a movie. I, like many other part skippers, was into it for the superficial reasons. I liked the action, character designs, and awesome fights. That pulled me into the series. Make no mistake though, I would not be a Dragon Ball fan today without jumping right into it. But when I started to actually watch Dragon Ball Kai and Super, I became increasingly interested in the story and fascinated in the world. And it was that fascination that led me to pick up the Dragon Ball manga and read the story from the beginning. By knowing what happens, restarting the journey really contextualizes the rest of the story, and the tremendous depth of the writing started to become more and more obvious the further I got. And once I started to do that, I started to see the setup and appreciate the interconnectedness of themes just from reading the story in reverse. So I was able to get everything out of the story by starting at a point that got me invested. And if somebody doesn't like a part of the story, then once they see the good part, they will start to become invested in the work, its world, its characters, and inevitably that curiosity will drive them to finish off the content they were initially avoiding. Only now they have more context which will enhance their experience and make them potentially enjoy the work, because otherwise they would not have watched it in the first place. So part skipping is a great way to make somebody a fan. For instance, I was not able to get my brother into watching Bleach, so I showed him episode 10, in my opinion the best episode, and he immediately became interested. I showed my Discord friends who didn't want to start Dragon Ball the two best movies, Battle of Gods and Broly, and suddenly one of them went on to watch more Dragon Ball content. I didn't like Naruto from the first episode, but my brother showed me the best of the Chunin Exams arc, and suddenly I started to watch more Naruto. Even watching Wednesday on Netflix makes me want to watch older Addams Family movies because of how quality that show and its writing is. So in practice, part skipping does not deserve its reputation. What matters most about any form of entertainment is that it's entertaining you. In fact, I'm willing to bet most people got into their favorite series by seeing clips or images of things that happen later on. And once you feel attached to the work, you can go back and enjoy it to the fullest. So I hope this video provided some new insights and hopefully alleviated some of the stigma surrounding part skipping, because really, part skipping just means somebody has the potential to be a real fan and go back and watch the first part. From now on, consider showing people who dislike the beginning of a series the good part, and maybe they too will appreciate your favorite series. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that I can actually turn this hobby of mine into something more. If you have any comments or opinions on this topic, I would love to know in the comments section. As always, thank you for watching. Happy holidays, and take care of yourself.